Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm Pete Sines, Mayor of the City of Laredo and Chair of the MPO Policy Committee meeting. I'm calling this meeting to order. Today is May 17th, 2021, and it's 1:30 p.m. And we're meeting virtually. You can join us. The meeting link is laredotx.swagit.com/live. And also through these public access channel, which is Spectrum TV channel 1300. That being the case, I would ask for a roll call, please, and I would ask Graciela Briones to help us in that function.
I'll be glad to, Mayor. Good afternoon, everyone. Honorable Tano Tijerina. Honorable Jesse Gonzalez.
Present.
Honorable John Galo.
Present.
Honorable Mayor Pete Sines.
Present.
Honorable Councilman Ruben Gutierrez.
Present.
Honorable Councilman Dr. Marte Martinez.
Here.
Honorable Councilwoman Vanessa Perez. Mr. David Salazar.
Present.
Mr. Humberto Tito Gonzalez.
Present.
For the record, Mayor, Mr. Chairman, you do have a quorum.
I'm sorry, excuse me. President Judge Tano Tijerina.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
And Councilmember Vanessa Perez present. Thank you.
Okay, so we have all the members present. Thank you very much. And obviously we do have a quorum, so moving forward to item 3, which is citizens' comments. Anyone willing or wishing to make a comment, you can call it 956-794-1623, and we can take your comment, questions, or concerns. Yeah, do we have anyone that has called in or at least asked that they would want to speak, as far as we know?
Mayor, no, we don't, but if you recall, there is a lag of about 2 to 3 minutes between what is happening here and what's displayed on our Swagit Spectrum channel 1300. So if we can just give it a few minutes, just a couple minutes, and while we're doing that, if I can remind everybody to please keep their mics muted, just so that we get the best audio quality for the public and as well for each other. Even if you can't hear it, you sometimes create feedback for the other viewers. And if I see you're unmuted, I may mute you. I don't mean that to be rude, just to, again, make sure we have the best audio quality. And but please don't let that stop you from making any comments. And we do not have anybody on the line, but if we do, our staff will let you know if somebody does call in from the public.
Good, thank you very much, Mr. Steidman. Moving forward on to item Roman numeral 4, and that's items requiring policy committee action. And 4A is the approval of the minutes of the virtual meeting held on April 19th, 2021.
Motion to approve, Mayor.
There's a motion by Dr. Marta Martinez. Is there a second?
Second.
By Councilmember Gutierrez, Ruben Gutierrez. Discussion? None heard. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign, or lift your hands. None opposed. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Item B, a discussion with possible action on a letter of support requested by Webb County for a grant application to the Texas Department of Transportation Alternative Set-Aside Program 2021 for the improvements of sidewalks in the city of Texas. There's a motion by Dr. Marta Martinez. Is there a second?
Second, Mayor.
A second by Commissioner Gonzalez, Jesse Gonzalez. Discussion. And the financing would come out of where, Mr. Steidman?
Right.
Yes, as a transportation alternative set-aside program, a TASA program, that would be through that program. It has its own dedicated funding.
Okay, and anyone can apply, the city, the county, and any other subdivisions as well?
It can only be applied for by governmental agencies or those who have who are in agreement with a governmental organization. So not just anybody can apply, but most jurisdictions and those that are teaming with the jurisdiction can apply.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, any further discussion?
I think they need it, Mayor. I hope they get it.
Oh, yeah. I hope so too. Yeah, call for the question then. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any opposed? None heard, none seen. By show of hands, so a motion carries unanimously. Thank you. C is discussion of the possible action on the Achad Ruthinger Road project. Do we have, normally the county, excuse me, it speaks to this. Do we have anyone from the county or even the city? Mr. Steidman, if we have anyone.
Good afternoon, Mayor. This is Guillermo Cuellar from Webb County Engineering. Just as a follow-up, we have submitted DGN files and other types of files to TxDOT for their review regarding the project.
Oh, okay, thank you. I think the last conversation we had was that TxDOT was going to visit with the county on this matter of the financing. Yeah, I don't know whether there's a timeline for that or whether you all did meet and Mr. Salazar or Judge or whoever, and if you all need more time, obviously it's, whatever, the timeline is set by TxDOT, I believe now, since they're kind of, absorbing this project, but I know there was a question of financing, whether the city and or the county would absorb some streets or some right-of-ways in exchange for TxDOT covering, the expense for the road project. So any movement along those lines?
Mayor, this is David Salazar, and Mr. Gonzalez will speak here briefly. He's been kind of spearheading this operation for us here at TxDOT. The main part right now is to get going on these set of plans so we can get the agreements in place and proceed with the production of the plan so we can move forward and hit that letting date that we planned on for some time now. As far as discussions on that, we have not moved forward in the direction of the agreements in place. Right now, our main goal was to get going with agreements so we can start work on this project. But I will let Mr. Tito Gonzalez fill us in a little bit more what's going on with that. So, Tito.
Okay, and,
Yes.
and I'm not pushing you all. Believe me, I'm not pushing. I'm just asking since we that touched on this. But really, it's your timeline, Mr. Salazar. Whenever you all decide to move on this. Yes, go ahead, Mr. Gonzalez.
Thank you all. Good afternoon. Tito Gonzalez here with TxDOT, Director of TP&D Laredo District. Yeah, just to give you all an update, some good news. We have progressed along this. We have already received executed AFAs from both the city and the county to move over on the city side for us to take over the PS&E, which is the development of plans for the Achad-Ruthinger portion, which is the whole roadway. So we do have that already executed. We have already our consultant on board, and we are going to have a kickoff meeting here in the next couple of weeks to get that started. So good news on that. With the county, we have their executed AFA as well. So we are already starting to bring our consultant on board to complete the pending environmental clearance items so we can move towards getting environmental clearance on that project. What that will trigger, once environmental clearance is attained, that will allow the city to complete the acquisition or the transfer of the right-of-way to the city of Laredo. And then speaking to what your question was, Mayor, at that moment in time, once the city has full legal rights to the property, at that point, we will be looking at doing a transfer of roadways with the city of Laredo and TxDOT to do the swap that you're referring to. I do want to clarify though, Mayor, TxDOT's agreement and TxDOT's all documentation will be with the city of Laredo. So if there is going to be an agreement or something between the city and the county, that will need to be an interlocal agreement between the city and the county as far as what responsibilities you all will take. So I just wanted to clarify that. TxDOT will only be dealing with the city of Laredo on that. So any dealings or negotiations as far as funding or how you want to divvy up that transfer, that will be on the city of Laredo. because TxDOT will only have an agreement with the city of Laredo on that.
Yeah, thank you for that notice. And I see Mr. Robert Eads, our city manager, also has joined us. So Robert, you're on due notice, and I believe Mr. Ria Sul, Mia has also been handling this, and of course our city engineer as well, Ramon Chavez. So Robert, can you hear us?
Yes, Mayor, I can.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So, I guess at the proper time, I guess you need a visit with the county and see to what extent the county can be of some help to us, to the project. Okay. Anything else from anyone on this item?
Well, if I may, Mayor Martin Martinez, just quickly, and the reason for this lack of working with the county would be, I guess, what's the reason? The location of the roadways, or just the semantics of how the agreement is being set up?
What was that question directed to me, Dr. Martinez?
Yes, sir.
Yes, so the reason is, if you look at the agreement that we have with the AFA, the responsibility was for the city, remember, to do the whole entire PSE and to let the project. So the city is fully responsible to get the right of way. And we have, I believe also, you may have your engineer, Mr. Ramon Chavez on here, but we have been meeting bi-weekly, Mayor and rest of the committee policy members, to get this project moved along. As we mentioned, it's very important to TxDOT. So yeah, the reason why is that the agreement was with the city, and that the city was the one responsible currently on the AFA to acquire all of the right of way.
I understand. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Thank you. Any other point on this matter? And if not, we need to move on to item C under Roman numeral 4. And C calls for, no, D, I believe. Yeah, D, and discussing possible action on the adoption of the proposed WL Kempo independent MPO plan. Mr. Snideman, I believe you'll be talking on this item plus others.
Yes, sir. I have a presentation prepared for the next few items.
Okay, sir, go ahead. Yeah, do you want to, for us to bring all the items so we can all kind of, have them on the table and we can discuss them?
Sure, I can go through all of them eventually if you'd like to, but probably best to take this one and see where the committee wants to go from this one forward.
Okay, well, that's fine. Go ahead, please.
Okay, so just want to remind the committee that the presentation today of this MPO, of this independent MPO plan, has a history on it, and it's a history that this policy committee instigated. So if you recall, back in 2019, we had discussions at several policy committee meetings where we talked about the MPO becoming independent, that was the recommendation of the Federal Highway Administration and TxDOT, and that we talked about a timeline that we would look over in the next couple years or so. And what I was asking for with the policy committee, I recognized, I agreed with the policy committee. I said, yes, we need to do that. If you recall, it was you asking for it, not me. I said, yes, but let me staff up first, because it would be very difficult to move to an independent MPO without an organization and structure in place. So we have reached those milestones that we needed to reach in order for us now to move forward with an independent MPO. So that was back in December 2019 where we talked about that timeline. In March of this year, we reviewed our work plan with you, our new 5-year work plan. And at that time, we talked about, we're bringing very soon the independent MPO plan. And then of course, today we're presenting it to you. So you received this in the packet. It was not a long document. It's only about 6 pages long, but I want to go through the highlights of it with you, starting with the advantages and disadvantages of the current system or moving towards an independent MPO. Now, on the advantage side is that the current structure of it being part of the planning department, we have access to city services, trainings, procurement, HR, payroll, etc. The disadvantage of that same thing is that there's a lack of MPO autonomy and independence. Oftentimes we're involved in things that aren't directly related to the MPO's mission, core mission. On the advantage side, we have operations to collaborate with city departments directly because we're in the same office as the planning department and the building department. That's not going to change. The MPO, no matter what, is still going to collaborate with the city and the county. However, on the disadvantage side of having those employees right here is often their responsibilities and their time is often blurred between what's, even though they're an MPO employee, they'll actually spend time on city stuff. And then on the advantage side, we have low operating costs because the city has currently chosen not to charge for the rent of this space where the employees are at. So that's good. But on the disadvantage side is that the tools, the personnel time, and other things that are paid for by the MPO have the potential to be utilized by city staff. And then a couple of other additional major disadvantages with the current system is that currently having a planning director who's appointed by the way our bylaws say it now is that the planning director of the city of Laredo is automatically the MPO director. With what that means ultimately is that the person who hires the planning director is the city council. And that's who the planning director is going to be most responsive to. How do I know that? Because I can tell you that's my experience these last 2 years. I tried my best to, I think you all have seen, to do the MPO differently, but even then, it's difficult when you wear two hats. And those of you who read the Bible, no man can serve two masters. It's a good old wisdom that I think is very apt here. And then the final disadvantage is that the MPO doesn't have, the staff here and the MPO director, me acting as the MPO director, has no final authority over procurement, salaries, hiring decisions. Even though I bring you an approved budget and tell you what my strategy is, and you say, yes, Kirby, do it, I don't have the final authority over that. It still goes through the city side and HR and management, and they ultimately make the decisions, even if the policy committee has already agreed to pay certain salaries and certain budgets. And so in other words, not only does that create a long process, but it means that the MPO director and the policy committee do not have the final authority over those decisions. So what I'm going to present very briefly is what's in the plan, an estimated 6-month timeline, that's just estimated, of the major events that have to take place. But I want you to understand that we're not doing this alone. We have the Federal Highway Administration, we have TTI, who's present in this meeting, and we have TxDOT. And we're not the first ones to do this. We won't be the last ones to do it. Other MPOs have moved to this independent structure. We have drafts of MOUs and contracts in place. So this is not going to be a difficult process, and we have them there to guide us. And then finally, the policy committee is not making all those decisions to be independent today. We're just making a couple of the first ones, the first steps, and then we'll be bringing back to you options and decisions to be made at a later date. So you're not deciding everything today. What you're deciding is to adopt this plan, to take these steps to move forward, and then to appoint an interim MPO director. So let's review quickly that timeline, what it's going to look like. So in May, we're going to amend the bylaws, starting with the public hearing period opening today, if you choose to do so. And today you can also appoint an MPO interim director. An interim planning director has already been appointed, but you have the authority to appoint a separate interim MPO director. And I'm going to be asking you to do that today. In June, we'll finalize the structure, staffing, and funding details when we bring you our annual work plan, which is a document that we bring you every year and that we're working on. In June, at that meeting in June, we'll also adopt the amended bylaws. There has to be a 10-day public hearing period, so we're going to open that today, and then in June you can actually adopt it, which means you can appoint a permanent MPO director at that time in June. And then in August, we're recommending to enter into a MOU agreement with Webb County as the new fiscal agent. Now, that does not have to occur. So the city of Laredo could remain the fiscal agent. The reason we are recommending the county become the fiscal agent is because we need a fresh relationship with a fiscal agent. Right now, what we have in place with the city of Laredo is a contract that allows us, that was signed many years ago, that allows the city to be reimbursed for MPO expenses. What we do not have in place are any MOUs that stipulate how this relationship occurs. And by de facto, we've been operating the MPO as just City of Laredo employees within the planning department. It is possible to enter into some MOUs, keep the city as the fiscal agent, so that it's very clear that the MPO is independent. It doesn't go through the city's HR, it doesn't go through management. It reports directly to the policy committee, the members who are here today. That is possible. However, it's not recommended. We are recommending it move to the county because it needs that new fresh start where it is just understood by everyone who's involved, all the staff involved, all the management involved, that it is a separate organization. Now, it was asked of me, hey, who over there at the county are you doing this favor for? Now, that perspective is exactly why we need to move, because this doesn't do one thing for the county for it to become the fiscal agent. There is no advantage for this moving over to the county, nor should there be any advantage currently for it to be with the city. As an independent MPO, they're employees of the MPO and they report directly to the policy committee, and there is no advantage to any other organization. And that's what we're proposing. So that would be in August. And as well in August, we determine the staff, we determine the meeting space and office needs. We would look for an in-kind contribution like the city's currently doing, where they just let us use the space. We would ask of that of the county or the city or of other organizations here in the region. And if nobody's willing to do that, we have funds to pay for all of the staff and all of the overhead for all those staffs with the planning grant that's received. And then in September, we'll want to establish new operating policies and procedures. Those will be brought to the policy committee. All these things, these MOUs, policies, procedures, and contracts will be brought to the policy committee for their approval. In September, we'll also authorize any necessary contracts or MOUs at the policy committee and or the city council or also the county commission if need be. And then finally, by October is when we would be ready, estimated, to transition over from those employees who voluntarily want to leave the city of Laredo employment and come to the MPO. That is voluntary, and as we're recommending it here, they wouldn't have to go. But again, these are not employees that shouldn't be doing anything for the city. They should already be employees that are working for the MPO. They're simply transitioning who it is that the name that's written on their paycheck. So the new structure would look like this. The policy committee, the MPO director would be appointed and would be reporting directly to the MPO policy committee. There would be no need for a division manager. There would be 3 transportation planners and an admin. And with me leaving, and also because right now we're down technically 1 position, we have an acting division manager, but she is a transportation planner by her planner 3. So in other words, we could absorb, if all of them wanted to come, if they volunteered to come, we could absorb all of them over into the new structure. And there's no need for a division manager when you have a full-time director. The reason we have a division manager now is because the director is part-time. So finally, just want to end with the endorsements. We reviewed this plan with the technical committee, which has representatives from both the city and the county on it. And there was a unanimous recommendation with those from the city and county and those others that serve on that technical committee. We also reviewed this with the Federal Highway Administration and TxDOT, and they've also endorsed this plan. And by the way, FHWA pointed out Laredo is the last TMA, the last large MPO in Texas that does not have this MPO, does not have this independent structure. We're the last ones. And just want to reiterate again, just like I said previously, we're not the first ones to do this. We won't be the last. We've got FHA and TxDOT there to assist us. They've got drafts of MOUs and contracts, everything we'd need to do to execute this within that 6-month time frame or longer if the policy committee chose to do so. But we're not doing this alone. We've got a lot of good guidance. And that is, that's the end of that presentation. Any questions from the policy committee?
Yes, do we have any questions or comments? I do. Would you take us back to that graphic, Kirby, the one you show the other one, I'm sorry, the structure?
Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
Yeah, right. So if I understand it correctly, and of course this is a big move, and I get the independence factor, because I know I've heard it also too from other TxDOT higher ups, other than David, and that we are the last big large MPO body here that needs to be independent, but the transitioning, at least from my end, and Robert, this is where you come in too, and I've asked you to join, please, also to share your thoughts. It's this detachment that I know that may create issues with the city, because I know some those employees currently are being paid partially by the city, and then if they do decide to go with the MPO, then it would leave us with a gap, and of course we're needing people now more than ever. So I know that presents an issue for the city, in terms of how do we fill these gaps? When do these people need to decide? So the city, in fairness to the city, we can start planning for hiring some other people if we get there. I mean, if we move there. And I know, and I also get the fact that Kirby is conflicted, or whoever sits in Kirby's position, because he's both the MPO director, but also the planning director, and obviously he's telling us that presents issues for him personally and professionally, I guess. So I just want to hear more from others, but for me, it's this transitioning. How do we? It would appear that the city would need more time in fairness to the city, and then if it's truly independent, if the system goes to the county as the fiscal agent, aren't they also? What you told us, Kirby, that it has nothing to do with whether the city or the county the city remains, or the county gets the fiscal agency. That really doesn't do anything. It doesn't give more authority or power or whatever. Yeah. So if that's correct, then and I know the question is votes. I mean, the membership, and apparently the membership would remain the same, as my understanding. So if you include the transit representative, the city would have 4 members, I believe, and the county would end up with 3, and then we have two TxDOT personnel. And if that doesn't change, it kind of leaves us basically with the same voting structure, unless there's plans to change that. And if there is, I think we all need to know. And I think the mayor continues as the MPO chair, and the judge or the vice chair. So if those kind of remain in place, then it's a question of just the money. Is the county then who's going to finance this? And are we going 50-50, or how's that going to work out? So I guess those are the questions or thoughts that I've got. The financing part, the independence part, the voting part, and the timing. Do we need more time as a city to plan any vacancies, potential vacancies, and there could be so anyway, those are my thoughts and questions. I'm raising more questions than solutions here, but
those are all good questions, and I can give you a quick answer to all of them. First, the vacancies. It wouldn't create any vacancies because those staff should be 100% already working on the MPO. So you're not losing employees. These employees are MPO employees.
Let me ask you this, Vanessa Guerra, she's the interim, correct, Robert? She's the interim planner now?
She's the interim, and she's already been moved out of the MPO, so she wouldn't be considered for this move. She's working in the current planning side as our historic preservation officer and zoning officer, and now the interim director after today. So there would be no vacancies created because these are MPO employees already. Now, in terms of financing, the city is not paying one dime for these employees. How it's supposed to work, how it should work, is that these employees are, when you're the fiscal agent, all it means is you're fronting the cash. That's it. You're putting up the cash and you get reimbursed for everything. And so this is not going to have any fiscal implication on the city or the county. regardless of who the fiscal agent is, you get reimbursed for your expenses for the MPO. Currently, we're not splitting staff, so it's not like we have a staff member who's half MPO and half planning department. So if we lose that person,
Mr.
we lose
Snyderman?
half a person. All the MPO staff are assigned 100% to the MPO. So if
Mayor-
they move, then there is no loss of city staff.
Yeah, I think Dr. Marte, yeah, is
Just while he's answering, I just have a question. How much do we front every year?
I'm sorry, could you say that again?
Yes, sir. How much is the city currently fronting annually?
We have the planning grant, which is the total amount we could be reimbursed up to, it's about 550,000. In any
So
given
then-
year, we typically pull about 300,000, sometimes less.
So then the county would have to front the 300,000?
They would have to front however much money, but they get reimbursed on a monthly basis.
On a monthly basis. Okay. I was just curious while you were answering. Keep going.
Yeah, so basically there's no fiscal impact. And then again, it is possible for the city to stay the fiscal agent. But why am I recommending it move to the county? Because I think there's been a long culture, a long history of what the MPO is. And yeah, we could write some MOUs and maybe try to change that. Or we could start a new relationship with the county and make it clear upfront that the county is not getting any advantage from this. They're not getting any additional staff. All they're doing is fronting the bill. And we
Okay.
can make that very clear in an MOU, contracts.
Mayor,
This
I'm
has been
sorry,
done
Mr.
by
Snyderman,
two
you
recent
said
stuff.
that twice, Mr. Snyderman, that you feel like there's a problem. Can you explain to me what the problem is? So we've had other directors that have shared this burden. So you felt conflicted during your 2 years in service here?
Yes, sir, I have.
Okay. And what was the conflict? What projects that you were working on the county were you not able to accomplish during your 2 years in this service?
Well, there are multiple examples that I could refer to. I don't know how detailed you.
Would you mind? Because I really want to know, because this is a big move, and you know, we haven't heard this before. This is the first that this is being presented to us, and you're presenting it as though this is some major conflict that you're dealing with. And mind you, this is the first I hear of this in your last day. So I'm trying to understand why we didn't hear of this conflict 6 months ago or a year ago. Because you're saying that it needs to move to the counties because you felt conflicted for 2 years. So I need to understand, why didn't you approach me a year ago?
Well, for one, this is only one reason why it needs to move over, why the MPO needs to become independent. This is not the only reason. This is one reason. And, you know, it would not really be your place for me to come to you and tell you about these things. These are discussions we have with management, discussions we have within our staff and MPO. If you want me to provide some specific examples, I can. But the point that I'm trying to make here is that this is only one reason why the MPO needs to become independent. And
So I guess you're saying now there's an implication that you brought these things to management and management did not make us aware of this?
I'll give you an example, a couple examples. One, we came to the MPO more than a year and a half ago, right at the beginning when I asked you for a different kind of program where we would not be going out for consulting, we would be hiring staff. And we proposed a work plan that you adopted as a policy committee with budget that set aside how much I could pay for the employees that I was trying to get. As you may or may not be aware, it's very difficult to get good qualified employees. So we got some applicants, we went through those, we were able to hire some, but there were some we were not able to hire. One example of someone we weren't able to hire, we had a very well qualified candidate, a female candidate, who I was proposing to pay just as much as we pay our male candidate who's equally qualified. And what the city told me is, no, we have to start at the bottom. And I said, well, we didn't start at the bottom for this other individual, for her male counterpart. And they said, we have to start at the bottom for this one. So we lost that female candidate. She was not able to come at the, even though what I was proposing was in line with the budget the policy committee had already approved. So you said I could hire up to this amount, and the city said, no, you can't. Now, ultimately, that responsibility, I'm going to say, is on me, because as the MPO policy, as the MPO director, I could have brought that back to the policy committee's attention and said, hey, I need to hire this person. You already approved it. you know, the city's saying no, but you already, I could have made it an issue. However, how would have that, how many bridges would have I burned as the planning director trying to do all the things I'm trying to do on the planning director?
And if we were to move this, let's say to the county, you feel that that would not be an issue?
By itself, no, but in addition to moving to the county as the fiscal agent, we start off that relationship with MOUs written into the contract of our agreement that the HR in the county and administration of the county does not have authority over the MPO. The MPO goes directly to the policy committee for any of those kind of decisions like hiring, firing, and office policy.
So
that's
that
the
could
missing
happen.
Piece from
That could happen the way it is. So that could happen the way it is right now.
It could happen, but even if we signed those, I would worry that there is already just an understanding and acceptance of what the MPO is, that it needs a fresh start. It needs a new fiscal agent. Doesn't have to, you're right, doesn't have to, but it really doesn't, it shouldn't give any advantage or disadvantage to the city or the county. In other words, that the city is arguing right now, hey, we need to keep the MPO. There's an advantage to the MPO and we don't want to lose it. That's precisely the reason it needs to go, because the city should be indifferent. The city should say, you know what, go or stay, it doesn't matter, because all we do is front the bill and get paid back on a month-to-month basis. Other than that, the MPO is its own thing. So there is no advantage. We don't care if we keep it or lose it. That should be the response.
But again, I'm not really seeing the advantage right now. You're saying the advantage is that they didn't want to fiscally pay more, and that bothered you because you couldn't hire the employee that you wanted to hire? Because it was based on our wage structure? Was that the problem?
So that's one example, is that you approved a certain amount that I could hire up to, and the city did not allow me to hire up to that amount. The second example,
and then you didn't bring that back to us, correct?
I did not. So ultimately, it's my responsibility, but I didn't do that because I don't want to burn bridges as a planning director. Because
no, but that's your responsibility is to come back to us and talk to us about that.
And here's another example, these are multiple examples.
If I may, this is John Galo.
Yeah.
That's exactly the point he's making, Doc. He's saying, you know, I have to answer to administration if I bring it back. And, you know, he's going to put him in a bad way. And,
yeah, it's gonna put him in a bad way no matter what. That's my point. Is that
what do you mean no matter what?
In other words, if he's at the county, if he's going to be independent, that's fine, but it has to be seriously independent.
Well, right now the planning director is the MPO director, so we're not proposing that the county planning director be the MPO director.
Yeah, so
we're proposing that there be a separate MPO director who is appointed by this board and not serve any other committee or council.
And then financially, what would happen is that you would get rid of the MPO administrator, if you will, to be able to, because we wouldn't need a liaison. You would take that money for the MPO director.
There is currently no MPO division manager.
Okay, so if there's no manager right now, so you're saying that the new director would take the funding of that position, if you will, to account for the 50%.
Yes, it would actually be less because you wouldn't need that position, and also you wouldn't need to pay what you're paying me. What I make is a reflection of the fact that I have 2 jobs and I work 60 hours a week. With this MPO director, it would be 40, 45 hours a week, maybe sometimes more. But you could pay what you pay more in line with other MPO directors for MPOs of our size. That was in the plan. The recommended salary was in the plan. So ultimately, it will be a savings because you don't need half of a director and then a division manager. You just need one MPO director who's paid appropriately and competitively with other MPOs of our size.
Okay, but we do cover 50% of the salary right now, correct?
You do currently, yes.
So, okay, so we would have, so there would be an increased cost to the city of Laredo, correct?
Well, you're only getting half a director, so no. I would say now you're paying for a full-time planning director. As far as whether there's an implication at the end of the day, really depends on how many positions they fill, because currently the planning department, we don't have all of our positions filled. So we have a salary savings, and we've had a salary savings for many years on the order of hundreds of thousands of dollars. So we don't have, we have additional positions that you could eliminate in order so that you don't ever go over. But the planning department has never gone over its budget, hasn't even got close. Like I said, several $100,000 salary savings every year because of unfilled positions in this department.
Okay, and just to be clear, because I'm trying to understand this independence aspect, what for the commissioners that are on, I really want to remember. I've only been here 2 years. You know, Mr. Galo, Judge, you've been here for a long time. What projects have you guys not been able to push through with this particular the way it's set up right now? Is there some granting opportunity or some something that we've missed out of just because of the fact that it's been set this way? I'm curious.
Doc, if you may answer that. I believe, I think the answer to your question is absolutely not. I think it has been very genuine to a certain point, but I think you're asking the wrong guy when you ask me, because independently, I've been pushing this to be independent for many, many years now. And this is coming from even from the higher ups in TxDOT to everybody else that I've spoken to, counties our size, to be an independent director. So to be quite honest with you, the answer is no. Nobody's done anything to us. But I think it's fair also to listen to Mr. Steinman's second example, maybe third example or something like that. I have spoken to the mayor on situations that just came up to me recently, and I think it's going to be very important for maybe the mayor to also say a couple of those words. That the other example that I think Mr. Snyderman's just being a little bit careful on how he says certain things, because there's going to be some situations, I think, here before long that we could get into some major trouble. So I just found this out. I made sure to tell the mayor as soon as I knew this, and I think it would be wise to listen to maybe example number 2 or 3. So Kirby, thank you.
Yeah, so another example is when I first got here, the transportation set aside program, which used to go under a different name, basically funds that we receive every year that we can spend on creative projects to encourage alternative transportation. When I first got here, we had done a call for projects and we had only received just a few. And those few projects, we're going to spend all of that money, not only the current year's money, but also previous and future years' money on almost all sidewalk improvements, hundreds of thousands of dollars, almost $1 million worth of sidewalk improvements. Now, when I saw that, having worked with MPOs all over the country and knowing how creative, how we could use these funds, it is the source of funding we can be most creative with in terms of what we can do to encourage alternative transportation and active transportation. My determination as the director at that point was, okay, let's not move forward with these projects that we received. Let's wait to do an additional call for projects, because oftentimes as an agency, we can do a call for projects, which means we put something in the newspaper, no one knows about it. And then we only get some applications back from those that are in the know. Whereas what we wanted to do is a call for projects where we actively go out in the community, target people we know could be very much involved, make sure we really sound the trumpet and get it out. And then when we get a dozen projects back, then we can better evaluate how we should spend these very precious dollars that we get. And I started that process, and then it was made clear to me that no, these monies have already been they've already been spoken for. And again, I'm going to put the blame on me, because at that point, what I could have done is said, no, that's the wrong call. Let me go to the policy committee, explain this to them, and then, let's air all the dirty laundry, and then people are going to be upset. And what do I do as the new planning director? Well, I just burned some bridges there. And there's a lot of things I wanted to get done. And as you know, in any organization, you're working with a lot of different parties, you try to minimize conflict. And so ultimately, I made the decision that, to me, this is a tremendous waste of money. Yes, we're going to make sidewalk improvements, but without any plan, which, as a side note, we're currently working on a plan to where we could prioritize sidewalk improvements. But with no plan, it'll basically be just council members picking where those sidewalk improvements go. And I felt like that was a waste of these precious dollars. But instead of bringing that to your attention, I said, okay, let me not rock the boat, because if I rock the boat now, maybe I won't be able to get done the things I want to get done, which is these last 2 years we've worked so hard to restructure the department, to to do all the things we've done in the planning department and for the MPO. I was able to do that because I felt like, you know, I didn't burn any bridges. So that's another example of those dollars got spent without more opportunities of others being able to be included on that. We didn't just spend this year's dollars, we spent 2 years of future dollars. We spent over $1 million of these funds. And so there's another example of how the pressure of the planning director and the city can influence how things happen on the MPO side.
And as to the judge's point, yeah, the judge is right. Yeah, he brought it to my attention about 2 weeks ago, Judge, more or less. Yeah, before then I really hadn't heard this matter or this potential conflict or whatever. So you're right, Judge. Thank you.
Mayor, can I add
If I may, Mayor.
Let's see, Ms. Perez, and then Commissioner Galo. In that order, go ahead, please.
I just want to say that I thank Mr. Schneidman for all his work that he's done, and I definitely understand where he's coming from with his conflict there. As somebody who is trying to accomplish a bigger picture, sometimes you have to lose, I guess, the battles so you don't lose the war. There's definitely a lot of stress that comes along with this type of conflict. And I know because I've experienced it, I've seen it myself in other situations. And I don't think that Mr. Schneidman is to blame for not bringing this forward, because ultimately you're trying to protect your job and you're trying to get a bigger goal accomplished in your position. And so I want to thank you for the work that you've done and for the, you know, the standing your ground. But at the same time, I don't fault you for not bringing these things forward, because I know why you didn't. But I'm glad that you did bring it up today since you were challenged and asked. And I do encourage the city to take these examples and this conflict into consideration and see that this may just be for the best interest of the greater good overall. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Council Member. Yes, Commissioner Galo, please go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate kind of the judge's point, you know, wait from the beginning when this was first an action item. I think he and I both were opposed to doing it up. We wanted to do it independent at that time, and we went with Kirby's recommendation, I guess, kind of unwillingly, but, you know, we kind of went along with the deal because I was afraid of not necessarily this, but something else happening. And, you know, I don't know if there's a different way to structure it, to lease a space and we co-pay, or, you know, only the lease space. So I don't think one has advantage over the other. I know that it was an issue at the beginning saying it had to go through an entity to do the payroll. However we want to do it. I mean, you know, I just think it's time, because I think we transferred like $500,000 to the city at that one time to start hiring everybody. And then, you know, this is the first time I heard about it, that he wasn't able to hire the people that they wanted to hire, and, you know, weren't able to pay, you know, no matter, depending on whatever gender it is, the same amount of money, you know, what they're deserving. So that's not right. And so I'm concerned about the transition. I know he's got a pretty good plan there, but, you know, whatever we can do to make it smoother, and like I say, if you all want to see some sort of joint venture, I'm open to look at that, you know, to see how we can do it. But I'm also concerned that these people don't have enough work. And that's why, you know, at the beginning we said, all right, you know, we don't mind them doing work for the city as long as they're doing their other job first. At least I didn't care if they did other work, you know, to fill in the day, but because I'm not sure that there is enough work, and Kirby could answer that, for them to be 8 hours a day, you know, 40 hours a week. And so that was my concern at the time. I was like, what are we going to do with all these people? And I know he said he hired them specifically for the people, for the city, to transition them in. And so now we're at this point, so let's see how we're going to get out of it.
Mayor, if you'd like me to respond to a couple of those points quickly.
Yes, sir. Go ahead, please.
Yes, number one, definitely there is plenty to do. And if you ever want to know what we're up to, go to the new MPO website, go under projects, click on the MPO work plan right here. It's a live document that we use every day to figure out our staff and our staff time and what our assignments are. You can look at all the plans that we're working on, which plans are active, we're currently working on them, which ones are scheduled. And each one of these plans, you can go to the link for these plans. For instance, you can look at the PPP, the Public Participation Plan, click on number 4, and you can see all the tasks that are assigned to the different MPO staff, the progress we're making on them, the deadlines, how long it's going to take. And so we have plenty of work. We have so much work that we're going to have to continue to use consultants. And, we try to use them more strategically because now we have full-time staff, but instead of giving them a whole project, we'll just give them a piece of the project. But yes, there's plenty of work for them. The second point I want to make with what you said is that there is no cost to anyone, the city or the county. All the expenses of the MPO get reimbursed by the planning grant, of which we don't spend all that we get every year. So there is no joint venture because you can't have 2 fiscal agents. You can only have 1 fiscal agent, and that all that agency is doing is fronting the cash, and they're getting reimbursed month to month, monthly back for those expenses. So this does not have any financial implication to whoever the fiscal agent is. And this plan, if you adopt it today, this does not say that you have to move to the county as the new fiscal agent. It could remain the city as the fiscal agent, and those options will be brought to the policy committee at a later date. What this says, though, is that whether the city stays as the fiscal agent or the county goes as the fiscal agent, which is what we recommend, that there be MOUs in place, that there be written contracts and MOUs that stipulate who's in charge of the MPO. It's the policy committee. It's not any other administration or HR or any other department. It is the policy committee that the MPO has to speak to. And that is the independent structure with an independent MPO director that every other large MPO in the state of Texas has. Every other large MPO in the state of Texas has this but us. We're the last ones that don't.
Mayor, if I may.
Could you house them at TxDOT?
Excuse me?
Could you house them at TxDOT?
Well, they could certainly give us an in-kind contribution of space, of office space, but no, they can't be our fiscal agent. But yes, they could, and we are going to be asking everybody for free office space like we have now. Right now, the city gives us this office space for free for the MPO employees, and they could continue to do that. We could continue to be here in the planning department.
I was just asking that because, I mean, even if we had to pay a little bit of rent,
but if we had to pay
access to everything that they need, basically, I mean, access to expertise, access to personnel, just easy. And I don't know if it's something they would entertain, but I was just.
And that makes a lot of sense. Yes, Councilmember Gutierrez, I know you've been waiting. Go ahead, please.
Yes, please. Just a couple of comments. Mr. Steinman, thank you for bringing this up. I am all about independence. I think the MPO should be independent. I'm all for that 100%. There's just a lot of questions that we still have, and we have not had them answered, and we're not going to get them answered in 2-3 hours, even if we were to stay on here until 5:30, 6 o'clock. To finalize a structure, staffing, funding details, policies, and procedures. I think we should discuss that beforehand, before we even vote on having this change done. I think it's premature for us to be voting on this right away, specifically because you just brought these matters to our attention. I had no idea that these issues were going on in the MPO, with the director himself. I'd ask for a little more time, and I would actually ask our motion to table the item to give us some time to do some type of research behind the doors and see what's going on, what we actually need, because I'm sorry, I was just hit with this on Friday. So it's very new to me to try to have all these changes take place. And the structure itself, I'm having a lot of questions when it comes to, a lot of people do, obviously. Just a lot of questioning as far as the staffing is concerned. Is it going to hurt the city? Is it not going to hurt the city? Is it only going to benefit the MPO and not benefit the city as well? And the county as well. We are playing partners together. We are partners together, and want to make sure that our leaders are still getting together and getting along very, very well as we are now. So I would motion to table the item until the next meeting, and then go from there, get a little further guidance when it comes to as far as the structure is concerned more than anything else.
May I ask why? Because, I mean, it shouldn't be hurting the city at all, and if it does, then there's something wrong.
No, the only reason why is because the structure itself, is it going to pull actual, not necessarily funding, but people from the city itself? That's what's concerning me.
They're MPO employees.
And then I understand, and then on top of not only the personnel side, but we're talking about the actual structure itself. You don't implement something and then try to do the structure afterwards.
The structure
Work on
is exactly the same.
beforehand.
The only thing that's changing is the MOU saying, okay, now nobody else, the agency that is funding or, you know,
Let me ask,
reimbursed will not.
and I'll take the motion, you know, once I speak. Yeah, maybe along the lines, you know, obviously we want a smooth transition. You know, we're partners. You know, we don't want major issues between the county and the city. And I think that Judge and I and all the elected officials that it's really trying hard to keep this good working relationship. Yeah, but yeah, I was going to suggest maybe Robert should visit with Uribe and come back and report to us.
Sorry, sir, if I may. I'm not sure why we have to get anybody. I mean, I think this is very well planned. I think this is a very detailed adoption policy that we could do. And I think Kirby nailed it with one statement that he said extremely well. This should not affect anybody or anything. This should be, it could, I mean, whether it goes back and forth to the county or the city to the county, county to city. I mean, obviously there's some things already that's already making us uncomfortable. And I say us, I would think the county side, because, and I'm very sure some of you in the city don't even know what's going on either. So that's a problem in itself. But I am very uncomfortable with what I'm hearing right now. And I'm actually heard more than I had. And so I'm not for waiting anymore and going down. I don't want to kick this can down the road any further than it needs to. I just think we need to adopt it, figure out how to do it, and move on from it and learn from this situation. Whereas the county and the city and the county need to learn from this and move forward as best as we can.
Mayor,
But you do have a motion on the table.
can I quickly clarify something that needs quickly clarify that adopting this plan does not adopt any of those changes. Adopting this plan does not put anything else into place. Adopting this plan just says we have a roadmap for the considerations that will be brought to you at a future meeting. So you don't need to table this. You can choose to do so, but you're not adopting this plan, does not adopt a new structure, doesn't adopt any of the MOUs, doesn't adopt a change of fiscal agent, doesn't do any of that. All it does is lay out, this is the framework, and then all those decisions will be brought to you in the next several months, and then you'll be able to make those decisions later. All this does is says, yes, staff, start looking into it, bring us back those decisions later, and we'll consider all options.
The interim MPO director decision.
That's a separate agenda item.
Okay, so
I haven't heard Mayor, I haven't heard a second, so I'll go ahead and make a motion to adopt Kirby's plan to move forward.
There was a second. Yeah, there was a motion. I was waiting because once there's a second, there's no discussion, and you know the value is a little discussion before the motion. But we do have a motion to table. Is there a second? Second. Seconded by Dr. Marta Martinez. All those in favor say aye. Please sound off so we can hear.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone else? Okay. It fails for a majority. I only heard two.
May now, Mayor, I'd like to move the motion to possible action on the adoption of the proposed W.L. Campo Independent MPO plan. That would be my motion.
Second.
There's a motion, a second discussion. So again, yes, go.
This is Robert Eves. A comment.
Oh, yes.
Just, it's because I'm hearing a lot of cryptic conversation that I have no idea about. I would have hoped I would have heard about all of this conversation before today's meeting. I had to reach out to Mr. Schneidman himself Friday night and ask him what this agenda was about, and then to try to explain the process forward. Yeah. Now I'm hearing about all this cryptic conversation that I have no understanding.
Mr. Eads, yeah, hold your thoughts. Yeah, there's some background noise. Could we mute all the mics so we can all pay closer attention to Mr. Eads?
Thank Thank you, Mayor. So I would have appreciated, especially from my planning director, heads up or notice that there was some issue. First of all, that's something that our own planning director could not figure out between himself and himself as an MPO director. I would have loved to have known that prior to today's conversation. This is quite honestly very, very very shocking to me, and I'm disappointed in how I'm having to hear about this, because I would have enjoyed, probably at least entertained the ability to try to address these conversations. But to hear them in this session right now and on your last day, Mr. Snyderman, not even given the opportunity and coming and trying to just make these comments and then run and leave wherever you're leaving to, seems very unfortunate, because I thought we had a better relationship to that, because I would have helped you through this process. And to say, let me also address one thing so that we're very clear. There has been a cost to the taxpayers, and there will be a cost. My understanding now, I'm hearing that Mr. Steinmetz' intent all along to hire these individuals in our own planning department was ultimately to migrate them over to the MPO. I didn't know that taxpayers were going to go ahead and train and house and have been recruited, which has a high cost to us, solely to be able to move them over into the MPO. I had no idea that that was the ultimate intent. I would have thought my planning director would be recruiting for the planning department and not another organization. And so again, I am just dumbfounded, shocked, and disappointed at having to hear all of this right now. Where it goes, I don't have a problem with that. But I got to tell you as well, I am a little dismayed at just hearing this right now, a couple of hours before Mr. Steinman leaves today. So I would have, appreciated a little bit more information, especially being that I did recruit Mr. Steinman to come on board and try to help with the situation. But it seems as though this is some sort of plan that's been contrived on the way out, because if not, I would have heard about this. I thought I would have heard about this months ago or a year ago, but to hear about it just hours before Mr. Simon leaves, I just have to say, I have to just make that comment and leave it at that. Make the decision that this commission wants to make without a doubt. But at least as a manager, I am surprised that it wasn't at least brought to me. Even in confidence, I would have had this conversation. I thought we just had that relationship. I did want to bring that out. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Yes, thank you, Mr. Eads. Yeah, any other?
Call for the
go
question.
ahead. Yeah, so let me be clear. So the motion is to adopt this, and you're saying that it doesn't really, it binds us to the process. Is that correct, Mr. Kirby? But it doesn't bind us to any one element of that process until we bring it item by item?
It doesn't bind you to anything. It simply gives the green flag to staff to move forward with working on future agenda items that will be brought to this policy committee for a decision. So it doesn't bind you to do anything. It's just, we're adopting the plan. You're letting staff know, yes, proceed with the work on these things and bring us back the decisions to make at a later date.
Okay, so the matter of the interim NPO director, is that before us now, or is it going to come?
Next agenda item.
Okay, and if for some reason we don't decide on the NPO director, what does that do?
That goes back to the assumption would be that it'd be the same interim planning director who was already chosen. But
okay, that's the assumption.
Not implicit, but that, currently the bylaws say that the planning director is also the NPO director. Well, after I leave today, you won't have a planning director. All you'll have is an interim planning director. But the assumption is that interim planning director, in lieu of what we're going to do today, would act as the interim NPO director. That's how we've operated in the past. But the next agenda item is for you to appoint an interim NPO director. I guess you could appoint that same person today to make it explicit, so there is no confusion.
Is the interim NPO director online here?
Yes.
Ms. Guerra?
Okay. Well, first of all,
Mayor, if I may, I think it's important for you to call the question and get this one done, and then go into the planning direction. If nobody else has any further discussion, I might want to add that.
No, I think we're there at that juncture, Judge. Thank you.
Mayor, I did want to make a comment.
Yes, ma'am, go ahead.
I just wanted to say, in all fairness to Mr. Sneidman, he was pressured and asked by another council member, Dr. Martinez. He was asked, and he answered the question. I don't think his intention was to hash out anything here. It's just that he was pressured to give an answer, and so I don't think that was part of the planning for this meeting. And so I just want to point that out. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much. Call for the question unless there's one last comment or thought.
Mayor, this is David Salazar with TechStop.
Yes, sir.
Real shortly and real brief, thank you to all the council people, especially Councilman Perez, down to the head of the commissioners and the council folks that provided comments on this one topic that we are having a DMPO discussion. Perhaps not the best place to have this discussion, but it did happen. I do want to thank Mr. Kirby Snyman, tremendous job. We've been dealing here for some time. I've been dealing with MPO over 4 years, and it has always been a situation where the independent MPO director was certainly something that needed to be looked at. I will say that you will have the utmost support wherever direction the MPO committee decides to go. I do want to remind everybody that there is nothing that we are doing different. If anything, we are doing what the rest of the state is trying to accomplish right now. And to answer Commissioner Galos, to house the MPO director within a TechStop facility, I can definitely tell you right now the answer will be no, just for various reasons that we've been on these discussions. But I do want the MPO committee to know that FHWA and division will be with you through this transition to answer any questions that you may have here at TechStop. A great opportunity for us to move forward in the right direction. Mr. Steinman, my condolences, not condolences, my hat's off to you, sir, for providing those examples. That takes a lot of courage to step up and do that. You've always been one to work great with TechStop. I want to thank you for that. We certainly are going to miss your leadership. And thank you a lot of times for guiding us in the right direction when, due to the fact that you were working for two entities, conversations seemed to sway in different directions at time, and reminding the committee what the reason of this committee is for project selection and projects moving forward. So I applaud you for that and your efforts. You are going to be missed. Hopefully we can stay in touch in the future. But to wrap it up real quick, Mayor, we will be assisting with you. FHW Division will guide you through this transition. Again, nothing that we're not doing different. It's been done before. And again, thank you for all the comments on those Councilman Perez, Donald Tijerina, Commissioner Galo, on a very important topic. And I think with the words that were being tossed around, conflict, battle, wars, advantage, you can see where this is a very touchy subject, that being an independent MPO director is certainly something that we can gain gains from moving forward to providing the best for the taxpayers. I believe that Mr. Mateo, Mr. Gutierrez provided here. So thank you again, Mayor. And again, you have a full support in whichever direction the committee decides to go.
Good, thank you very much for those words. And along those words as well, Mr. Salazar, you said that TechStop would not be able to house, possibly the answer would be no. Keep in mind, we have the RMA, we have, the MPO, we have the county planning and the city planning, maybe some neutral place where if we truly want independence, which I think we all do, then maybe somewhere where, these entities can be autonomous, but at the same time, they can visit together. But of course, that's probably the next agenda item that's coming up. Keep that in mind too. I think, somewhere, and I know the city is in the process of building or something, and I know I've heard Robert here and there on some thoughts on, not necessarily on this, but maybe it could house all of these, entities together, and if we can all pay rent somewhere. So anyway, any other thoughts? And if not, I'll call for the question. All those in favor, say yes or raise your hand so we can see. So 1, 2, could you all be vocal, please?
Yes.
I'm in favor, Mayor.
Okay.
Commissioner Gonzalez in favor.
In favor.
Yeah, so
In favor.
I think we have 4 votes out of the 7, I believe. So it carries. Is that correct, Mr. Steidman? I don't.
There were 6. Mr. Gonzalez, Mr. Salazar, Mr. Galo,
Oh, okay.
Commissioner Gonzalez, Judge Tijerina, and Councilmember Perez.
Okay, and the others would be opposed, and of course I would be in favor as well, for the independents, and of course all the other factors now, so the motion carries.
No, Mayor, that's not true. I am in favor. It's just I didn't think we were ready yet, but don't assume that I said no.
Oh, okay, so you're in favor, Mr. Gutierrez, are you in favor?
Sir, same thing. It was just a lot of questions that we have, but
Okay.
Kirby made it clear that this is not one direction way it's gonna go. So there was questions, we still have time to question it, as far as the MOUs are concerned and structures itself. I'm all for the independent of the MPO, absolutely.
Okay, so it passes unanimously, thank you very much.
Mayor, if I may, I would like to ask your interim planning director to put on the next agenda to change the bylaws to no longer be automatically your planning director appointed as the MPO director.
Well, the next two action items will deal with both of those things you just brought up, Commissioner Galo.
Okay, already on next one.
Okay, so the next item is discussion of possible action, the appointment of the interim MPO director, separate from the interim City of Laredo Planning Director, who was appointed by the Laredo City Council. So, Mr. Kirby, well, I guess we know what the issue is. Yeah, but just be brief if you can and see.
Don't you have to change the bylaw first before you can do that?
No, not for an interim, you don't. You have the authority to appoint an interim director. And I'm making a recommendation today for that. The person I'm recommending is Juan Mendive, who is currently a planner 3 with the MPO. Now, the fact that you may not personally know Juan Mendive is actually a good thing, because what we need is an MPO director, somebody who's not connected, just somebody who's going to do a fantastic job. Also, Juan Mendive, other than myself, is the only certified planner in Laredo and Webb County and 100 miles from here. It's just me and Juan, and after I leave, it'll be only Juan. He's the only certified planner in the city. Congratulations to Juan. He got his certification this weekend. It's a very difficult process. He has a bachelor's degree in urban planning, a master's in city and regional planning, a master's in public policy and management. He's worked at the county planning department. He's worked at the housing authority as a planning assistance administrator. At Neighbor Works, he was an operations manager, and currently works as the planner 3, one of the planners in the MPO. Now, all the credit you've given me about this MPO and what we've been able to do these last couple of years, it looks like me, it's actually a team effort. But if anybody deserves a more disproportionate amount of the credit, it is not me, it's Juan Mendive. He has done a fantastic job. He works hard. He never leaves a job undone. And I'm confident that he's the new MPO director you're looking for to do a fantastic job of bringing this region together, working with everybody, and making sure that we put transportation planning in Laredo where it needs to be. So that's my recommendation.
Looking forward to meeting him. I'm not sure who he is. I'm sorry, Mayor, man.
He's on. If we could ask him to speak, Judge, he's on. I want to see if he's.
Sure. Yeah. Yes, Mendive. Yeah. Do you care to visit with? And go ahead, sir, please.
Everyone, good afternoon. As Curry mentioned, my name is Juan Mendive. Just a quick clarification. I did take my AICP exam on Friday, and I did pass that exam. There's just one final little step that I need to do, paying the dues to the organization, and also just submitting some final essays to be fully certified.
So this is the level of technicality that you're getting with. He's a good administrator that won't take credit where he's not good. So he's almost there.
Almost there. Just want to make sure that's clarified. Because now that I will be certified, there's a specific code of ethics with AICP that I need to abide by too, and that's always being transparent and honest. But yes, I do have a bachelor's in urban planning from Texas A&M International University. I worked at Webb County. That's where I started my career, Webb County Planning Department, under the leadership of Ron Tiffin. After there, I went to Neighbor Works, Laredo, became an operations manager there. Was there about 3 years. And then I decided to pursue my graduate degree out of state at the Ohio State University. And I got a dual degree, a master's of city and regional planning, and a master's of arts in public policy and management. Came back to Laredo, worked at the housing authority, and really wanted to do more planning related work. So I came over to the MPO. I think this is a great place to work. You know, it's something that I think I see the potential for the MPO, what it can do at a regional level. I think, you know, if we utilize all the tools and the funding mechanisms available, we can really utilize the MPO to be an organization that will look at things regionally and can create the region that we all want to see, that we all desire, and also bring more investment, you know, to the region and to the community. So I think, you know, it is important for the MPO to eventually be independent. I know it's a very delicate position right now. You know, right now, if this happens, there's still going to be a lot of uncertainties, a lot of unanswered questions. But as I've mentioned to Kirby before, I'm willing to play a role for the MPO, whatever that role is, whatever the committee would like me to play, whatever role you all would like me to play. You know, I'm just wanting to contribute to the team, making sure we succeed and that we succeed as a region to make sure that, you know, we do our best job to bring the type of, you know, transportation improvements that this region deserves. And if you all have any questions, I'll entertain those.
A couple more points I'll add is I reviewed this recommendation with FHWA, with the feds, and with the state, with TxDOT, who've worked with Juan, and they both agreed with this recommendation that Juan would do a great job as he's been working with them a lot. As you know, a lot of the MPO work is working with the feds and working with the state. So they both agreed with this recommendation. And I'll also say that selecting him as the interim director is just that. It's just the interim director. So you can make a decision later. That's the next agenda item. We're going to talk about a permanent director. But his being the interim director doesn't change anything about his status, currently working you know, for the city of Laredo, technically, as do all the MPO employees technically work for the city of Laredo. That doesn't change. And as the interim as well, his salary doesn't change unless the city decides to give him a boost, which they normally do with interim directors. But it doesn't change. Making this decision today doesn't change that. All it does gives him the assignment as interim director to move the ball forward on the assignments until you appoint a permanent MPO director.
Okay, thank you very much, gentlemen. Yeah, anything else from the commission here? Is there a motion that we should entertain?
Commissioner Gale, you're muted if you meant to be speaking.
I'm sorry, I said I would go ahead and accept Mr. Kirby Snyderman's nomination of Juan Mendive as the interim MPO director.
I'll second that.
There's a motion, a second by Judge Atano Tijerina, and discussion. Any further discussion? Now keep in mind, this is interim, so if he comes on board, you know, we can further evaluate him as time permits.
Going to be effective immediately or after this meeting?
Be effective when I leave. So
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am, go ahead.
After the meeting.
Will Mr. Mendive, will you still be running the active transportation meetings as you have been?
Yeah, that's something that I was thinking about. I think for a bid, I could do that. I know, for the example of the technical committee, Mr. Steidman does chair the technical committee, and he's also the MPO director at the moment. So there's no issue within our bylaws, but in terms of the time commitment, I think eventually, once we do have a permanent MPO director, whoever that person is, I think someone else should share the committee.
Well, I just wanted the committee here to know that he has been running the active transportation portion of the MPO. So that's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other comment or question? None. Call for the question. All those in favor say aye.
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 And again, I can't see you all. So, Mr. Steidman, do you see them all? Never, my vote would be aye as well. Unanimous, that's my understanding. All those against? Yes.
Yeah, you may.
Yeah,
You just ask if there are any against. That would be easier.
Right, none against. Motion carries unanimously.
Welcome aboard.
Okay. Congratulations, Ms. Mendive. You're welcome on board.
Thank you. I look forward to working with everyone.
Yes, sir. My pleasure. Is the next item, receive public testimony and initiate a 10-day public review and comment period for the following proposed amendments of the MPO bylaws. Article 2, Section 2.3, membership terms and administration shall be amended to allow a permanent director for the MPO separate from the City of Laredo Planning Director who is appointed by City Council. So again, this is just this independence factor that we've been talking about. So we'll have someone totally independent from the planning director. Is that correct, Mr. Steinman?
Well, the way it's worded here is not exactly the way the bylaw change would be. The bylaw change would just simply make it so that it's not automatically the planning director. It is by appointment of the policy committee. So in the future, if city management appoints a really good planning director and you decide, hey, let's make that woman let's make her the MPO director as well. Well, then you certainly could do that. It's just not automatic anymore, that it automatically becomes the planning director of the City of Laredo. It is up to the decision of the policy committee to make that decision. And so it says separate, but it just means the appointment is separate.
But then again, this is only a public hearing, in other words, a 10-day public review and comment period.
That's correct. This opens the public hearing, and the next meeting you make the decision, and then at next meeting you could actually make the appointment, or you could wait.
Okay, so we're not really.
Motion to open up the 10-day public hearing.
Okay, there's a motion for the 10-day public hearing. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Perez. Discussion. None heard. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
No hands. I can't see you all, but any again? Those against, please stand out. None heard. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Next. The status report by the Regional Mobility Authority, RMA. That's under Roman numeral 5, reports and presentations. Do we have Mr. Rodriguez?
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, members of the committee. I hope y'all can hear me fine.
Yes.
Thank you for this time. I'll be very brief. As the update for the Regional Mobility Authority, my name is Antonio Rodriguez, General Engineering Consultant on behalf of the Regional Mobility Authority. So the quick update is this: we do have multiple projects ongoing. First off, of course, is our Kilim Industrial Boulevard Turlings project, as we commonly know it. That project is going to start construction in the month of July, and will be constructed actually by the Texas Department of Transportation. While the project was originally was led in November and awarded this year, the notice to proceed to the contractor to start the work. The first item, of course, was the ordering of the signal poles for the project. And as we're seeing across the state, it's a pretty common issue where we're seeing a significant lag time in these signal poles arriving on various construction projects. So not just here in Laredo, but also we're seeing this also in Hays County and other parts of the state. I think the lag, we're looking at about a 6-month lag for this item. But we're excited for the project to get going. So we're looking at that definitely in July for work to begin. Next project is, of course, the Los Presidentes project. Of course, this project is a joint project with the RMA, the City of Laredo, Webb County Drainage District. Construction is ongoing. Construction started back in March. We had our first progress meeting with the contractor MTZ Construction last week on the 11th of May. And we have begun discussion with the first real change order for the project, specifically with updating part of the street to concrete pavement. The segment what we called Phase 2A from Concord Hills to Brownwood. And this will match the pavements, the street pavement section that we're looking at, and we're calling Phase 1 from Cuatro Vientos to Concord Hills. So that project is ongoing. In addition, as part of the Los Presidentes area, there's also the Cuatro Vientos component for the proposed acceleration deceleration lane that will tie into Los Presidentes. The design of that project is ongoing. 90% was submitted to TxDOT earlier this month. We're looking at having a design review meeting from TxDOT. We just got notification of that actually today. So hopefully we'll have that over the next week. 100% plans will be submitted to TxDOT in June. And right now, TxDOT is targeting the month of October for advertisement lighting for that project. Next project, of course, is the Viaceo Road project. This is the RMA's first project. We have a meeting scheduled, or at least the chairman of the board of directors has a meeting scheduled with the Transportation Commission Chairman, Mr. Bruce Bugg, for the 25th of May, where we'll be discussing the funding for Viaceo Road. As Mr. Mayor and others, y'all are aware, the RMA is partnered with the City of Laredo, as well as also the Kilim company for funding of the project. And we are having discussions with the Transportation Commission to see if we can fill the gap of the funding for that project.
What's the gap?
It's currently $17.5 million. That's the gap.
Did Congress require, adopt that as an earmark? Yeah, he was thinking or contemplating that. Did he finally decide to include the Viaceo as one of his earmarks? Do you know?
Yes, sir. Congressman McLeod is including that as part of the earmark. Of course, that's still pending the legislation associated with that. But it was positive when he notified us that he did want to include it as one of his priority projects.
Yeah, and did he exclude the 5 million that the city? We could use the 5 million someplace else for another project, but I'd asked that if the earmark could cover the 17 plus our 5, we could use the 5 somewhere else. Do you know any of that, or do you know how he submitted that?
Yeah, no, sir. No, we submitted the application for the amount that we were lacking, and we were including at the time when we submitted it the funding partners that we had, including the City of Laredo.
Yeah, because my understanding is the city committed 5 and the Kilim's 5 million.
That's
and
correct.
Right away, the Kilim's obviously were committing that. So the gap was 17.5. So he submitted that as an earmark, 17.5. Okay, that's good to know.
Mayor, if I can ask so.
Yes. Go ahead.
Have you all done the environmental?
Actually, we did start the environmental a couple of years ago, Commissioner Galo, and we took it to a certain point, but at the time the project wasn't fiscally constrained, so we decided to stop work because the clearance would not have been reached the FONSI without the fiscal constrainment. Now that we are much closer and we have a funding plan in place, we're basically waiting to see in what manner we're going to have that funding gap resolved, that we can continue on with the environmental.
Well, I was just going to say, because if the environmental is done, there was probably an opportunity to move some monies around and get that gap funded. But if the environmental is not done, there's no sense even looking at it.
Yes, the environmental is pending on the fiscal constrainment, because we would need a finding of no significant impact by the Texas Department of Transportation to achieve that, and that would need the project would need to be fiscal constrained for that. And that currently it still is not.
Because there's a project there by Jaime Zapata, the loop, the extension there that goes into Los Presidentes. Is that something that's tied to the other project that you're doing? I wouldn't think so, but there's a lot of movement there of earth, of dirt. Looks like a drainage. Not connected to you all, Tony?
Not that I'm aware of, Mr. Mayor. The limits of our project that we're working with the City of Laredo and the Drainage District on, it does start from Cuatro Vientos on the east side of Cuatro Vientos, and it extends close to a mile past Concord Hills up to Brownwood Street and stops there. There is a major drainage crossing in that just east of that, but we are not getting into that floodplain with the project.
No, that's fine. Thank you.
How long will it take you to finish to get your FONSI? I mean, how much more do you think environmental do you have?
Well, that's the good thing about it. We would basically restart off, or we'd have to reevaluate what we actually did, which was the archaeological and the antiquities permit. And then we would move forward with the noise analysis, which we can do as well now with the completed traffic study that was done at the end of last year. We also do have now a good pavement design as well. At the current estimate, we're still thinking about, from a conservative perspective, it's looking at about a 12-month turnaround. And we would hope we could do it faster, but that's just a conservative estimate in time.
Very well. Thank
you. Anything else? Yes, sir, go ahead.
Just one last update, Mr. Mayor. We do have our board meeting scheduled for this week on the 19th or Wednesday. And I believe I've invited everyone in the policy committee to that. If you can attend, of course, it would be virtual via WebEx. If you have not received an invite, please let me know and I'll be happy to forward it on.
Great, thank you very much.
Invite.
Yes, ma'am. Ms. Bettis.
I'd like an invite, please.
Yes, ma'am. I will definitely forward it to you.
Thank you.
Okay. And myself as well, but that's standard.
Yes, sir.
Okay, then. Director's comments. Thank you very much for your comments and report. Now going to director's comments.
Yes, sir. If you'll permit me to say a few words, since it's my last time with y'all.
Sure, absolutely.
First, I'd like to say that my original plan was a 5-year plan here in Laredo, and then to reevaluate after that. But due to some personal family circumstances, which happened quite recently, that's all changed. And for a long time, I've put my career first, which has allowed me to gain a lot of experience, work a lot of different places, but it's also had a cost that this juncture I need to make a different decision, and one that I believe is the correct one. With that said, so from the beginning, one of my main objectives I wanted to accomplish with this MPO was to guide it to become an MPO, independent MPO. So I want to apologize to Mr. Eads and Mr. Ria that yes, maybe this was sudden and only that we've been talking about it for a while, but I wanted to bring it before I left because this is important to me. So we did put together a plan, and that will allow you to take the necessary steps in the future. But it has been something we've been talking about. It is something very important that you've been asking for. It's very important to me. So I just want to reiterate, I have all respect for Mr. Me and Mr. Eads. I think they're two of the best city managers I've worked with. And I do hope that Mr. Eads, Mayor, that you get him a contract, and a multi-year contract, because I know he can do a fantastic job with the city and for the city if you allow him to do that, if you allow him to take the reins and guide the city. It's been a pleasure to work with them both. And it's also been a pleasure to be both the planning director and the MPO director. And I have all faith that Mr. Mendive is going to do a fantastic job for you. He is the MPO director you need, I believe. You want somebody who can work with everybody, someone who's not connected in any way, someone who's just going to do a great job. And I know he's going to do that. And then finally, just on a personal note, I have loved living in Laredo. If you recall from the beginning, one thing I always enjoyed saying was, you get here, the first thing everyone tells you is, "Oh, it's really hot here. Are you prepared?" And I always like to say, from East Texas, it gets hotter there, and so it has been hot. It has been very hot, but it's also been very fun, very exciting. There are people here you won't find anywhere else. Laredoans are so unique, being part of two cultures and the pride that they have and where they're from. You can go places where maybe they've got some pretty mountains, or maybe the weather's great a lot of the year, and there's people from everywhere there. You go places like California, trying to meet a Californian, you meet people from everywhere else. But the nice thing about Laredo and places like Laredo, but Laredo in particular, almost everybody that's here is from here. And everybody's got their grandma here and their families, and they have carne asadas and they invite you over. And it has been very easy to make friends and make connections, many of which I'll miss. And so I'm very grateful not only to have served as your planning director and your MPO director, but also to have met many of you and to become friends with so many Laredoans. I'm definitely going to be back to visit, and I definitely will miss it. So thank you very much, and I look forward to keeping in touch.
Yes, thank you so much for those kind words, Mr. Steidman. On my end, I've expressed the value that I see and saw initially in you as well, various times. But again, thank you for all the help that you provided, the guidance that you've given us as well. As you can tell, it's not easy, being a director or dealing with the governmental entities. And of course, we saw this today too. But it's nothing personal, at least not from my end as well. This is, we need to express what we need to express at the time, because we are public servants and we have to be transparent and open. And sometimes that transparency translates into, possibly words that we don't necessarily like to hear, but that's public service. And I know I hear them all the time, for and against, and that's what public servants do and take for the most part. So anyway, I appreciate your willingness, your abilities, and we wish you well. Godspeed to you, sir. Thank you.
Mayor, can I comment?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, Kirby, I just want to say that I didn't get to work with you long enough. I just got here and you're leaving, but I do want to thank you for taking my calls and my numerous questions. I know I've talked your ear off and I've asked you so many questions in the short period of time that I've worked with you, but you've always been so willing to answer them, and whether it's not the answer I want to hear, you'll still give me that answer, and I appreciate that. It's not easy to be that kind of person that doesn't, just tell people what they want to hear, and sometimes it's for our own better benefit to hear that maybe what we were thinking wasn't the right thing, or we were looking at things wrong, or we didn't understand something. And so, you're always have a very positive demeanor about explaining things. And, I just want to thank you for your professionalism and your courtesy and your caring and loving Laredo. And, I really feel like you did embrace the city, and you did take you're going to take something away with you. And so I just want to thank you. And anytime you want to come back, the doors, the city's always, we're here. And, whether or not there's a vacancy or not is up to management and all that. But, definitely, you're welcome from a friend's standpoint. You've become like family here. You've lived here long enough that you're like family. And so, just Laredo's always going to be a place that you can feel welcome at. So thank you so much again.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you for those comments. Anyone else? And if not, this should conclude our meeting. Yeah, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion to seconded. Discussion. None heard. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? None heard. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
This meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
And it's 3:07. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.